For 30 years, fans waited for one answer. Would Jim Carrey ever put on the mask again? Then he stood on a red carpet in December 2024, smiling as the cameras flashed, and a reporter asked him the question everyone wanted answered. What he said next traveled faster than anyone expected. It was just one word, almost a joke, but it lit the internet on fire within hours. Some called it a shutdown. Others swore there was something he wasn't telling us. Cameron Diaz had already said she was ready. So why did this moment suddenly feel so strange? The truth is complicated. Jim Carrey was born as James Eugene Carrey on January 17, 1962, at Newmarket Hospital in Newmarket, Ontario. He was the youngest of 4 children in a working-class Catholic family. His mother, Kathleen, stayed at home and struggled with health problems. His father, Percy, worked as an accountant, but part of him lived somewhere else. He had once dreamed of becoming a professional jazz musician, playing saxophone, and maybe even making people laugh for a living. At home, he filled the house with stories, jokes, and little performances. And without even knowing it, he gave Jim something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Jim grew up seeing both talent and disappointment under the same roof. That left a deep mark on him. He learned early that being gifted was not always enough. Sometimes life asked for more than skill. Sometimes it asked for endurance. Then life got harder. In the middle of the 1970s, Percy lost his steady accounting job, and the whole family slipped into survival mode near Toronto. Money ran so low that, for a time, the Carreys lived out of a Volkswagen camper van in Scarborough while they searched for work. Jim was still in his early teens when childhood began to disappear. By about 15, he was spending long hours after school working as a janitor and security worker at the Titan Wheels factory. His parents worked there. His siblings worked there. Jim worked there too. He would clean toilets at night, then show up at school the next morning and try to carry on as if everything was normal. Somewhere in the middle of all that exhaustion, comedy stopped being a hobby. It became something he needed. Even before those hard years, he had already started building that strange gift inside himself. By around 8, Jim spent hours in front of a mirror, pulling his face into impossible shapes and copying voices with eerie accuracy. He was not just trying to be funny. He was learning control. He was learning how to turn his body into a performance. At 10, he mailed a letter and a tape to the Carol Burnett Show in Los Angeles, proudly listing his impressions and asking for a chance to appear. The answer was no, but even that meant something to him. Someone in Hollywood had seen his name. At school in the Toronto area, teachers sometimes struck little deals with him. If he stayed quiet and behaved, he could use the last few minutes of class to perform for everyone. So the classroom became his first stage, and the laughter started giving shape to a future he could feel, but not yet touch. That future still felt very far away when he first tried stand-up for real. In his mid-teens, Jim auditioned for Yuck Yucks in downtown Toronto, one of the toughest comedy clubs in Canada. He walked on stage around age 15 in a polyester suit chosen by his mother, carrying a set built mostly on impressions of stars like Sammy Davis Jr., James Stewart, and Elvis. He had talent, no doubt, but the act had no strong center yet. It had voices, energy, movement, and nerve, but not much structure. The crowd gave him nothing. They were older, sharper, and used to a darker style of comedy. The room went cold. Jim bombed badly. He later said he could clear the place out. He would stay up there until the audience was gone, then drive home in tears. That failure hit him hard enough that he stayed away from Yuck Yucks for nearly 2 years. Still, the dream did not leave him. By 1979, as he moved toward 18 and 19, Jim had decided that staying in Toronto would slowly crush him. He had already left school around 16 to help support his family, and he spent 2 more years working those janitor shifts while saving money. Then he went to Los Angeles. He reached the city in the early 1980s and pushed his way into the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard. There he became a regular and built a huge collection of impressions, more than 100 of them, stretching from Humphrey Bogart to Kermit the Frog. One night, Rodney Dangerfield watched him destroy the room and liked what he saw. He invited Jim to open for him on tour for a full season. That mattered in a way few breaks do. It gave Jim steady income, real visibility, and his first strong foothold in America. Even then, success did not arrive all at once. For years, Jim Carrey lived in that strange space where people noticed him, remembered him, and still did not fully trust him. In 1984, he landed the lead in NBC's The Duck Factory, playing a sweet, naive cartoonist in a sitcom set inside an animation studio. The show premiered on March 12, 1984, and disappeared after just 13 episodes. Airing against Cheers made survival nearly impossible. Around that same period, Jim took whatever film work he could get. He showed up in small parts in Canadian TV movies like Introducing Janet and Copper Mountain. Then came supporting roles in Once Bitten and Peggy Sue Got Married, where he played one of Nicolas Cage's goofy friends. He was funny. People could see that much. What they still could not see was a box office star. That became the problem that followed him through the late 1980s. In Los Angeles, Jim kept doing stand-up and character work, but the industry began to place him in a narrow box. Casting people said he was too broad, too cartoonish, too much. He kept getting close, then being pushed aside. Even The Duck Factory had softened him into a mild lead, which buried the wild physical style he was sharpening on stage. By 1988, he was stuck in projects like Earth Girls Are Easy, playing a blue furry alien in a strange comedy that barely left a mark. The business treated him like a novelty. People enjoyed him, but they did not yet believe he could carry a movie. Then television changed everything. In 1990, Keenen Ivory Wayans brought him into In Living Color, the Fox sketch show that ran from April 15, 1990 to May 19, 1994. On that show, Jim found the perfect place for his energy. He became the breakout white cast member and created unforgettable characters, including Fire Marshal Bill, the badly burned safety maniac who shouted at viewers while destroying himself in every sketch. Week after week, Jim threw his whole body into the comedy. He slammed into walls, twisted his face into madness, and pushed every bit until it felt huge, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. For the first time, executives could see that his style was not a flaw. It was the act. It was the reason people watched. Even then, film studios still hesitated. Jim had become a cult favorite on television, but major movie executives were unsure whether a sketch comedy star could hold a feature film for 90 minutes without wearing people out. His speed felt risky to them. His energy felt hard to control. In 1992, Fox gave him a different kind of role in the TV movie Doing Time on Maple Drive, where he played a recovering alcoholic. Critics were surprised by how restrained he could be. Yet the people who made big box office decisions still saw him as that wild guy from the Wayans show. So Jim found himself in a frustrating place. He had fans, he had range, he had momentum. Still, the biggest movie trust had not arrived. Then came 1993 and 1994, and suddenly the whole story changed. By 1993, Jim had quietly lined up 3 lead roles that did not look like sure things at all. They looked risky. They looked odd. They looked like the kind of projects that might miss completely. The films were Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Ace Ventura came first, It was shot in the middle of 1993 and released on February 4, 1994. The movie cost around $15 million, and Jim was paid about $450,000. Critics did not know what to do with it. Some disliked it. Audiences felt very differently. The movie exploded into a sleeper hit, earning about $72.2 million in North America and around $107 million worldwide. That one success changed the conversation. Jim Carrey was no longer just a TV guy with a weird face and huge energy. He had opened a movie. Then things moved even faster. The Mask, filmed from August to October 1993 and released on July 29, 1994, turned a budget of around $23 million into about $351 million worldwide. Dumb and Dumber followed on December 16, 1994, and earned around $247.3 million on a $17 million budget. By then, Jim's salary had jumped to $7 million. Almost nobody in 1993 could have predicted that all three films would hit in the same year. Yet that is exactly what happened. The actor, once dismissed as too cartoonish, had just become the defining comedy star of the 1990s. That rise felt even more shocking because his movie career had looked so uncertain only a short time earlier. At the start of 1994, his film pay was still somewhere in the hundreds of thousands. By the end of the next year, he was earning several million per movie. Soon after, the cable guy would make him one of the first comic actors to receive an upfront salary of $20 million. In simple terms, his value in Hollywood exploded. Studios stopped treating his name like a gamble and started treating it like a strategy. Out of those three films, The Mask did something especially important for his image. Ace Ventura had made people notice him, but The Mask showed what else he could be. Released in July 1994, it let him play Stanley Ipkiss, a shy bank clerk who turns into a larger-than-life force when he puts on a magical mask. The role gave him room to be romantic, playful, strange, musical, and wildly physical all at once. The movie reached a much wider audience than Ace Ventura. Families could watch it, kids loved it, adults loved it. Suddenly, Jim was no longer limited to one lane. The film itself had gone through a major transformation before it reached theaters. The Mask began as a violent dark horse comic with a much darker tone. Early versions of the movie stayed close to that horror style, filled with graphic violence that belonged more to a low-budget splatter film than a summer comedy. That changed once Jim was cast in late 1993. Director Chuck Russell saw what Jim could do and reshaped the whole project around him. The movie shifted into a PG-13 cartoon fantasy, full of Tex Avery-style chaos, exaggerated movement, romance, and visual comedy. The violence faded into elastic gags and impossible reactions, and that change helped create one of the most memorable films of the decade. Jim's body played a huge part in that success. Visual effects supervisors later said his performance saved them from needing far more CGI because he could physically do things that already looked unreal. In scene after scene, especially in the club and bank moments, his wide-eyed reactions and stretching expressions were mostly just Jim performing on set, with only minor digital cleanup afterward. That approach helped keep the film on schedule and within budget, and it still earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 67th Oscars in March 1995. The movie also launched Cameron Diaz. She was only 21 when she auditioned in 1993, and at that point, she was mostly known as a model. Casting director Fern Champion reportedly saw more than 200 women for Tina Carlisle before Diaz arrived late in the process and read opposite Jim. She later said that Jim improvised so much during their Coco Bongo scenes that she had to react in the moment, and that spontaneity gave their chemistry a spark people immediately noticed. Her debut became unforgettable, and the film turned both of them into part of the same summer movie event. Improvisation shaped some of the film's most famous moments, too. Jim was always changing lines on set, and one of the biggest examples was "smokin'." That line was not pushed heavily in the script, but when he delivered it during an early Coco Bongo take, people on the production knew they had something special. Test screening audiences laughed hard, and New Line's marketing team quickly built that energy into posters, trailers, and TV spots. Before long, the line was everywhere. The numbers backed it all up. The Mask opened in the United States on July 29, 1994, with about $23.1 million in its first weekend. It went on to make around $119.9 million domestically and roughly $351.6 million worldwide. That made it one of the 4 highest-grossing films of 1994. For a comic book adaptation at that time, it was one of the most profitable examples anyone had seen. Coming in the same year as Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, it pushed Jim all the way into the top tier of global box office stars. Then, something even bigger happened. The Mask stopped being just a hit movie and became part of everyday life. By the end of 1994, it had spilled into bedrooms, schoolyards, toy stores, and television screens. There were neon green VHS covers, posters, talking toys, and all kinds of merchandise built around the film's look and catchphrases. In 1995, CBS launched The Mask, the animated series, which ran for 3 seasons and kept Stanley Ipkiss alive on Saturday mornings until 1997. Kids copied Jim's loose body movement, his stunned reactions, and the dance from Cuban Pete, as if those things belonged to the culture now. Even decades later, people still looked back on The Mask as one of those films that captured the style and spirit of the mid-1990s in a way very few comedies ever manage. With that kind of success, a sequel seemed obvious. New Line wanted one quickly. The first film had earned more than $351 million worldwide on a budget of about $23 million, and the studio immediately started thinking about a direct follow-up with Jim returning as Stanley Ipkiss. The problem was simple. His original deal had no sequel clause, and by that point, his salary had risen so fast that bringing him back became far more expensive. By 1995, he was already committed to Batman Forever and Ace Ventura. When nature calls, and he had started thinking carefully about repeating himself. He did not want to get trapped inside the same act. Reports later claimed he turned down an offer of $10 million for The Mask 2 because he wanted to avoid creative stagnation. The first big explosion came in 1994. That year gave audiences Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Those films turned a former sketch comic into a major movie star in a matter of months. The Mask alone pulled in more than $350 million worldwide and fixed a very specific image in the public mind. Jim Carrey was no longer just funny. He was the living cartoon. He was the man whose whole body seemed made for impact, stretch, and release. Studios saw that image and leaned into it. Audiences did too. For many people, that was the real Jim Carrey. Then came the first serious break in that image. In 1998, he played Truman Burbank in The Truman Show, and instead of pushing harder, he held back. That choice surprised critics more than any loud performance could have. He earned a Golden Globe, and, for the first time, real awards attention followed him in a serious way. A year later, Man on the Moon pushed the shift even further. He disappeared into Andy Kaufman so completely that the production became famous for it. Stories spread about extreme method acting, tension on set, and a version of Carrey that was hard for people around him to separate from the character. Years later, Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, would revisit that strange blur between performance and identity. By the time Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind arrived in 2004, The transformation felt complete. Here was a quiet, bruised, deeply human performance inside a film built on memory, heartbreak, and the pain of losing what once mattered most. Many critics still call it the best work of his career. What made that evolution even more fascinating was the fact that it was happening while Carrey himself was beginning to talk about a much darker inner life. Behind the huge box office hits and the endless laughter, he described periods of depression, spiritual searching, and emotional emptiness. The applause that once looked like the center of his world was no longer enough. Over time, he began speaking more openly about how fame, money, and public attention had failed to touch the pain underneath. That pain, by his own account, went back a long way. He later connected his desperate need to entertain people to childhood. He spoke about trying to make his depressed mother laugh, and how that need shaped him. Suddenly, the manic force of Ace Ventura did not feel like pure silliness anymore. It felt connected to fear. Fear of silence, fear of fading, fear of becoming invisible the moment the laughter stopped. Once you hear him describe it that way, the whole career starts to look different. The giant comic energy is still there, but it now seems tied to survival. That is why the next phase of his public life felt so strange to watch. Even as his interviews grew more reflective, he kept returning to broad studio comedies. Liar Liar in 1997 and Bruce Almighty in 2003 both gave people the elastic, explosive Carrey they expected. Yet even those stories quietly echoed what he was wrestling with off-screen. In Liar Liar, he plays a dishonest man who is forced into truth. In Bruce Almighty, he gets godlike power and still cannot repair the broken parts of his own life. The movies were sold as mainstream comedies, but the themes beneath them were already moving closer to his private concerns. As the years passed, that split became easier to see. On screen, he could still step into high-energy roles and deliver exactly what mass audiences wanted. Off-screen, he was drifting towards something else. He started talking more about meditation, consciousness, identity, and the illusion of success. At red carpets and press events, he sometimes sounded less like a movie star and more like someone trying to dismantle the whole idea of celebrity while standing inside it. He dismissed the circus around fame. He said Jim Carrey was just a character. He suggested that the self people celebrate is often a performance held together by habit and expectation. For some viewers, this was profound. For others, it felt baffling. Either way, it made him impossible to read in simple terms. By the 2010s, he seemed to move back and forth between two worlds. One world still wanted the famous brand, the family-friendly comedy star, the man who could sell a huge studio picture through force of personality alone. The other world pulled him toward retreat, painting, introspection, and a life that did not depend on public approval. He began speaking about art with a kind of relief, as if the canvas gave him something film no longer could. Painting offered total creative control. No studio notes, no corporate machinery, no need to turn pain into a marketable smile. That retreat from Hollywood eventually became direct enough that people started wondering if he was done for good. In March 2022, while promoting Sonic the Hedgehog 2, he told Access Hollywood he was probably retiring and said he was fairly serious about it. He talked about loving his quiet life, loving paint on canvas, and feeling that he had enough and had done enough. It was not framed like a dramatic farewell. It sounded more like a man who had stepped far enough away to realize he no longer needed the machine that had once defined him. He even said he would only consider returning if something truly meaningful arrived. The kind of script that felt rare enough to deserve breaking his peace. That line mattered because it changed the way people heard every later interview. Once an actor says he might be finished, every small comment becomes loaded. A joke becomes a clue. A pause becomes a hint. A vague maybe becomes a possible comeback. Carrey later softened the retirement talk, especially in 2024, describing it more like power resting between projects than a permanent exit. Still, the core message stayed the same. He would choose carefully. He did not need to come back. Any return had to earn its place. That is exactly why talk of The Mask keeps pulling so much attention. Out of all his old roles, Stanley Ipkiss may be the one most tied to the public memory of Jim Carrey at full force. The film came out in July 1994 and turned him into a global cartoon icon. So, when he said in late 2024 that he might be open to a Mask sequel if the idea was right, the internet reacted instantly. The condition mattered. He did not say yes. He did not promise anything. He made it clear that the concept and script had to justify the return. Still, for audiences raised on that film, even a cautious opening was enough to spark a wave of sequel talk. That talk grew louder during the late 2024 and 2025 press tour for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Nearly every stop seemed to circle back to the same question: would he wear the mask again? The timing made the speculation even easier to sell. Sonic 3 was arriving in December 2024. The culture was already deep into nostalgia. Legacy sequels were everywhere. It had been about 30 years since The Mask first hit theaters. All the pieces were there for entertainment outlets to turn a few careful comments into a running saga. What made it work so well was Carrey's way of answering. He did not feed the machine with a bold yes, but he never slammed the door shut either. In interviews, he kept saying some version of the same thing. It would have to be the right idea. It was not really about the money. He joked about paychecks, but kept pushing the conversation back toward creative value. That careful language let headlines do what headlines do best. A measured answer was turned into a mini-event. One quote became a new wave of articles. Then those articles became proof that something was happening, even when no script, studio deal, or production timeline existed. Other voices helped fuel the feeling that a reunion might be quietly taking shape. Cameron Diaz said in early 2025 that she would do a Mask sequel if Jim was on board. Chuck Russell, who directed the original film, also spoke positively about the idea of a proper follow-up if the script respected the tone of the first movie. None of this confirmed anything. These were conditional comments, not concrete plans. Yet in the social media version of the story, the conditions quickly disappeared. What remained was the simpler fantasy. They all want to come back. Now they are just waiting for Jim. That gap between what was said and what was imagined became even clearer during a red carpet interview in December 2024 at the Los Angeles premiere of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Entertainment Tonight spoke with Carrey on the carpet, while cameras flashed and the crowd pressed in around him. The setting was already perfect for a clip that could travel. Then came the sequel question. He was asked whether a new Mask movie with Cameron Diaz could really happen now that she had returned to acting. Carrey paused, smiled, and delivered the line that would live far longer than the moment itself. He said he had to remain silent because anything he said could and would be used as clickbait. It was a joke, and a sharp one. He was clearly poking fun at the media cycle built around comments exactly like that. In the raw exchange, the host laughed and moved on. His tone stayed light. He did not sound angry. He did not shut down the interviewer. Soon after, he was talking in a thoughtful way about life, worry, and the false structures people build in their minds. The mood was calm, but once the clip escaped into the online world, the framing changed. Now it could be edited, titled and packaged however people wanted. The word clickbait became the hook. Commentary channels and gossip pages started presenting the moment as an awkward shutdown. Some made it sound like a tense exchange. Others implied there was some hidden friction around the question itself. The reality was much smaller. Carrey had joked about how his words get turned into headlines, and then the joke itself became a headline. In a way, the quote proved his point instantly. Then another layer of internet weirdness arrived. In May 2026, a Facebook page claimed that Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz had sparked excitement with a surprise reunion at a luxury auction. According to the post, they had been seen bidding on a mysterious green-tinted Nordic artifact that looked suspiciously like the magical mask from the film. It sounded almost designed in a lab for fan pages. There was no solid evidence behind it, no verifiable auction records, no clear photographs from a credible source, no serious outlet backing the claim in a meaningful way. Still, the ingredients were perfect for speculation. Reunion, green artifact, high-end auction. One more nudge, and the story almost wrote itself. When that rumor collided with the older red carpet clip, some channels treated the combination like proof of an unfolding drama. Suddenly, titles appeared suggesting a reunion had become seriously awkward. Yet there had been no confirmed fight, no meltdown, no major fallout. The awkwardness mostly existed in the edit, not in the event. That is what made the whole thing so revealing. Modern celebrity stories often grow less from reality than from the space between a quote, a rumor, and the emotional tone creators want to sell. As strange as that episode was, it was still not the strangest Jim Carrey story of 2026. That came in Paris. On 26th of February 2026, Carrey appeared at the 51st César Awards at l'Olympia to accept an honorary César. It was his first major public appearance in months, and almost as soon as the images hit social media, the reaction became bizarre. He looked older, of course, but also different enough in certain photos that people began calling him unrecognizable. His face looked fuller. His skin looked tighter and more reflective than in some earlier appearances. Within hours, social media users were posting side-by-side images and asking whether this was even the real Jim Carrey. That question, absurd as it sounds, exploded fast. Some people claimed the real Carrey had disappeared years earlier. Others insisted the man at the ceremony was a clone or an imposter. Screenshots were dissected for eye color, jawline, skin texture, and teeth. What should have been a simple explanation about aging, lighting, cosmetic work, or image distortion became something much stranger. The internet had once again decided that reality was less believable than conspiracy. Then, Alexis Stone made it even messier. Stone, known for extreme celebrity transformations, posted images from Paris showing Getty shots of Carrey at the event next to a lifelike silicone face, wig, and fake teeth laid out on a desk. The suggestion was obvious, even if the post played with artifice rather than fact. Many users took it literally. Now the theory shifted. Maybe the man on stage had been Stone in full prosthetics. USA Today later used AI image detection on the supposed mask photo and found it highly likely to be manipulated. But by then, the screenshots had already spread everywhere. TikTok edits, YouTube breakdowns, and rumor accounts treated it as evidence. Eventually, organizers and Carrey's own team had to step in and confirm something that should never have needed confirmation. Jim Carrey had attended the César Awards. He had planned the appearance for months. Organizers said discussions had been ongoing since the summer of 2025. He had worked on his French acceptance speech for a long time, and even cared about exact pronunciation. He had come with family, close friends, his longtime publicist, and director Michel Gondry. His representative also made it plain that the clone theory was not a real issue. Yet the episode revealed something deeper about the current media environment. People no longer just wonder whether a celebrity photo has been edited. They now wonder whether the person in the image is real at all. That shift feels especially strange in Carrey's case because his whole screen identity trained people to expect facial distortion, transformation, and unreality. The Mask, The Grinch, Count Olaf, those roles all made his face itself feel like a special effect. Over time, that plastic quality became part of how audiences saw him. So, when his real face changed with age, styling, lighting, or possible cosmetic work, some people did not read it as normal change. They read it as another mask. The internet had turned his own legacy against him. Even a joke on the César red carpet about his favorite funny face being the one he was wearing right now could be pulled into the conspiracy machine and treated like a confession, which brings everything back to the same central tension. Jim Carrey remains one of the most recognizable comic stars of his era. But he no longer moves through Hollywood like a man chasing the next hit. He moves like someone who already walked through the fire, took the applause, felt its limits, and learned that stepping away can sometimes hold more power than staying visible. That is why every possible return matters so much. Whether the topic is The Mask, Ace Ventura, or any other old role, the real story is never just about nostalgia. It is about whether a man who says he has done enough still finds a reason to come back. Right now, that answer remains uncertain. Carrey's current position on The Mask is still basically the same. The idea would have to be right. The script would have to justify the risk. He has made it clear that he does not want to revive old material just to cash in on memory. Studios and media outlets may love the logic of easy nostalgia, but he keeps placing a harder test in the way. That is why the sequel exists in a strange state. It feels close enough to imagine, but not close enough to trust.